to be here. There's nothing specifically on the agenda tonight. So there's a couple issues that we have to deal with. One of them I called Debbie to talk to her about trying to isolate down the dates for votes, because what we had said for the election for November, because we had erroneously left that Woodchuck Hill issue hanging out there. We didn't get it back in when we rewrote it. Remember that? And we said we were going to get that back on the November ballot. So what we're trying to do is establish, like, you know, what we have to do for a process to make sure it's back on the November ballot and do it, you know, correctly. And then the only other things I could think of off the top of my head without doing a deep scourge of everything, you know, were the two facilities, the marijuana facility and the drug treatment facility. You know, even though it's implied, because it's in that section of the ordinance, we didn't have the exact words. You know, an operational permit will be required. We didn't say those exact words in there. So what we wanted to do was to just make sure that the wording was consistent for those two things. Those were the three things that we wanted to get on the November ballot. So what Debbie was doing was going through this. Now, the two administrative issues for the operational permitting, they're not zoning issues, okay? But the Woodchuck Hill thing technically is a zoning issue, because on July 1st, it got technically unzoned, you know, for prohibition for the wind turbine. So now it's technically zoned that you can put a wind turbine up there, but we actually don't want a wind turbine on Woodchuck Hill, because what we had promised, we didn't mean to take that out. But putting it back in, kind of following through the flow chart there, because we're going to rezone it, no wind turbines on Woodchuck Hill. We have to have, that piece has to at least follow the zoning standard. So that's what Debbie and I are trying to sort out.
Okay, one question about Woodchuck. Did John Williams want it zoned for wind towers or no wind towers?
Well, he verbally said he did not want it. However, it was in the old ordinance, and we advertised that we were going to put it back in zoning. Now, he has never issued a written thing to the town saying, please unzone this.
Okay, could we get hold of John Williams first before we do anything more? Because he's the owner of Woodchuck, to find out what his wishes are for it.
Yeah, I think a letter from the planning board or something.
Well, he has to, at a minimum, and maybe just you can just tell him that, the select board can, you know, whatever. He just needs to know, if he wants it unzoned, he's going to have to do it. But then, this is the thing to deal with, though, on the flip side of that, okay? And I know what you're saying. I mean, on the one side, because it's John's property, I agree with you, okay?
Yes.
But on the other side, you know, it was in the ordinance,
Yeah.
and we advertised that it was going to stay that there was going to be no change.
Okay.
Okay, that's what we advertised,
Yeah.
and then we realized, somebody pointed out, it was Paul or somebody else realized that we had taken it out. That was a mistake. We actually voted to put it back in, but we couldn't get it back in time to meet the wickets to get it back on for the July 1st vote.
Okay.
So, in my opinion, you know, because we voted on it as a board unanimously to put it back in, okay, and it was just a clerical error not to get it back in, okay, we need to get it back in there, okay.
And then let him follow the process.
Let him follow the process to get it
Okay.
unzoned.
All right.
That's what I think we need to do. So, we just need to have an amendment written just to cover that one paragraph that puts that back in there. And there's, like, according to this, what we have to do is we have to, technically, you know, we have to take it back to the select board, and the select board has to set a date. But the select board actually already approved, well, not technically, I
Not
guess.
technically, because we didn't know it wasn't in there.
Right.
Okay, because the select board's meeting next Wednesday night, so we can have it go before the select board next Wednesday night.
Recommendation.
Right, we can just have the recommendation go
Yes.
forward, and then they can set the date. They can go through the formality of setting a date at the November election. And then all we need to do is just make sure that the wording is made available, you know, 45 days prior, because they would have already set the date, you know, and then all we need to do is have, you know, a public hearing between, right, we can have a planning board hearing and a select board hearing the same night.
Same time.
All we have to do is have it between the 45-day mark and
Yes.
so what's the date of the election in November? Is it like the 2nd or 3rd or
Isn't it the fourth?
the 4th, yeah, you
I
should
have
know.
to check.
Yeah, you should know. That's a good question for
Ask me, yes, remind me.
Yep. It would be the 4th, first
Alright.
Tuesday.
Right, so that means the 4th of October, which is actually 31 days, so 31 days in October, you know, and then 14 days before that, we'll put it back into
September
September
15th.
15th or 20th. When is this select board meeting?
For this month,
For September.
September would be the 17th.
Right, that would still be the 45-day deadline.
So we could have one on the 17th of next month.
We can do it at the same time.
Yeah.
Right, they could go ahead and formalize the actual wording,
Yeah,
and we'll still have the 45-day thing.
and plus that'll also give us a chance to put the notice in the paper too.
So we do that twice.
Yeah, but I mean, that
Yeah,
gives us 30 days to
'cause it's
get
like,
to
No,
know.
does the notice have to be in the newspaper, have to be in 45 days prior? It's just that, it has to be in front
like
of,
7 and 10 days or something like that, or 10, 13.
Okay.
Whoever come up with these numbers is crazy.
right, but to get to the meat of the vote, if we, on the 17th, we can just tell them that we're gonna do it, and they can actually go through the formality, we can get the verbiage all squared away for the 17th meeting and not have to have any special meetings. So I just wanna avoid, I just don't wanna have special meetings.
Okay,
Right in there, this is in the manual. You guys have it zoning amended. So, it's 12 days for the hearing.
Okay.
So they'll follow that.
All right. So you can just have it in the minutes, that we want a November election, that they need to just vote that we can have it, and then they can tell the planning board to make sure the wording's available for the 17th of September meeting, which we will. We'll have it down to the exact, you know, just because it's just adding one word, but I just have to get the right article number and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then the only other 2 issues will be, and I'll look up, and I'll have all the stuff will be squared away, even though the other ones aren't zoning. We'll make them all do it at the same time, so it's all can be done easily. So, and that takes care of that issue.
Yeah.
I just printed these off because you have it in your ordinance, in case you guys didn't know.
Oh, yeah.
We should leave it in the front.
Yeah, we should.
These need signatures.
Okay. All right.
That's April meeting in May, I believe June, not sure what happened to July.
We didn't have a
We
meeting in
didn't
July.
have a meeting in July. We
All
didn't
right.
vote,
All right, I'll sign. I'll sign. All right, so actually we have to go through, we'll do, pass this around real quick, April meeting. So while he's quickly passing those around, he actually moved to the May and June, we'll just do it formally in a second. We also need to get the comprehensive planning process started. So all I really want tonight from that is just maybe like a vote, kind of a little bit informal, but just a vote from us to the town, i.e. Debbie and the select board, to solicit volunteers for the comprehensive plan, you know, and maybe have a effective, you know, we want everybody's names in by, maybe like by October or something like that, and that gives us like basically 2 months to round up names of people who are interested and advertise that we're gonna start the process in October at the planning board meeting. You know, and then we'll come in October, at that meeting, we'll start to come up with a roadmap for the rest of it, but if we can get volunteers in advance of the October meeting, it'd be wonderful.
I like the way he phrases it, the way he looks. You are doing it.
Now, is this gonna be, just for my education, we from here, this is just tweaking the existing plan more or less?
No, it'll be a major rewrite, because the original plan, I think, is either I think was it approved in 2006?
So
Right, so it's 8 years old.
Before.
And clearly, you know, things have changed quite a bit. 5, so it's 9 years old. So by the time you would actually go through the process, you know, it takes you like roughly 12 to 24 months to actually do all the work, you know, on a voluntary basis, plus have consultants come in, you know, plus get funding for maybe things that you want to do. It'll probably take us like from October through like January to come up with an idea for, you know, different ways that we want to fund it, different things we want to do, so that we can go and get the first year's budget. Like, for example, you know, whether we're going to hire a consultant or not hire a consultant, you know, and how much money we're going to get set aside for that, so that that can be requested and put onto the annual report for the March meeting. You know, this kind of gets into like your, you know, familiar territory for you, for how you have to do your budget cycle so far out.
But we're talking probably weekly meeting kind of thing?
No, it won't be weekly, probably. What will actually end up happening will be, we'll have meetings like probably two times a month. Probably make them in concert with the planning board meetings if there's not other things going on. Instead of just the planning board being involved, there'll be maybe 1 or 2 select board members and some other citizens in town who are interested. There'll be, these are things that we'll kind of work out starting in October. We'll figure out, you know, how many subcommittees there needs to be. Like, for example, this is just saying academically, there might be a committee about, you know, transportation. And a transportation committee might go out and be looking at, you know, what are all the issues having to do with, you know, roads in Clifton, Maine. And they might go back to the town records and find out annually how much money we spend on the roads, you know, what roads are currently, you know, abandoned versus not abandoned, and are, you know, this sort of thing, okay? That might be, then there might be another subcommittee that might look at, you know, recreational assets in the community. And they might look at like, you know, is the town promoting or not promoting, you know, Eagle Bluff, Peak and Mountain, the golf course, you know, what are the private and public accesses that we have in town, you know, what does the ordinance look like, you know, what are the demographics, what does the school system look like, you know, what does the town want to do, you know, with regard to commitment to school systems. Like, I doubt this will come up this time because we actually are having a shrinking student population, but in some towns, you know, during the comprehensive planning process, that's when they make decisions like, we recommend that the town look at building a school, you know, in 15 years or in 10 years, or have a fire department or have a police department.
That's really talking about strategic plan.
Yes. Yes, and that's actually, hang on a second, that's actually what I've actually rephrased it as, is a strategic planning process for the town as opposed to comprehensive planning, because comprehensive planning, even though that used to be in a former state where they had a comprehensive planning office, their state planning office in the state, they had a thing called a comprehensive plan. That's really, in my view, that's not really the right wording. It's just exactly what you said, strategic planning. It's like that's what you're really doing, okay? And that's actually in the corporate sense. If you're running a business, you know, that's what you do. You're doing a strategic plan for down the road. But it involves some political work in terms of gathering information from people, for how people feel about stuff, you know, what people's goals are, studying hard numbers, census data, just a whole variety of things, even including, you know, one of the things is what you just got finished writing, your use of the facility, the town facility for emergency response. There'll be a whole component of that, and how that could play out in the future, and what the needs are. Maybe we need to have more money put into emergency response, and, you know, maybe we need to have, you know, if you had a big school population, obviously it gets cold up here in the wintertime, you figure out where bus stops are, and if you have a problem with kids getting cold, you know, you might say, well, we need to have like 5 warming huts in town and 5 bus stops in town, you know, and this is where the people can drop them off, and then, you know, they'll be warm in the morning or whatever. I mean, that's the kind of thing that comes up in a comprehensive plan, or a strategic plan, really. Those sort of esoteric issues to some degree, but important to some people and maybe not so much for others. How are old people getting along? Do we need to have, should we be promoting elderly housing more? I mean, I don't know the answer to any of these questions, or whether we'll even discuss them, but those are just the types of things.
Ultimately, the town will vote on the plan.
Yes.
Accept it, right?
Ultimately, right. At some point, and that's why it takes, like, it's a 12 to 24 month process to do the whole thing from end to end, you know?
And a lot changes in that 12 to 24 months.
Right. Will this be something to have public hearings on?
Oh, yeah, many.
Okay.
And hopefully you have a lot more public input onto it.
Right, and that's why there will be people who are on the select board, members of the general public involved, and they'll be involved in subcommittees that go and do stuff. Now, they might meet one subcommittee for say maybe 3 or 4 months, they might be really active, and they might meet like every single week for 3 or 4 months, because they're really trying to get something important, within that subcommittee framework done, okay? But that wouldn't be the actual comprehensive planning committee meeting and the subcommittee would actually might even include people who aren't on the strategic planning process, actual formalized committee, okay? Those people will all be appointed through the select board, at that point. But there might be people, they go, well, I know these 3 people are really good, and in some particular area of interest, okay? And they'll go get 3 or 4 citizens to go work with them on it, and then the chair probably is on a formal committee, and they'll come do the report the twice a month thing. But like I said, they might meet for 3 or 4 months, every single week to do something that's important to them if they want to. If that's how they feel they can get it done. But that's ideally. So their pans out like that. Well, I just tried to give you a picture book.
It sounds like what the government would call a strategic plan.
Right, exactly. Or any company. So, Teresa?
Just as a heads up, we already know the schools are being reconfigured, but if you go to the school board planning board, the school board meetings and how they're planning, they really do want a consolidated school and not 15 years down the road. So I suggest you kind of pull that one into a little closer in your strategic plan.
Right, I'm agreeing with that. And actually, coincidentally, I got asked to go talk at, I think there's a meeting like the 4th of September or something like that. So I'm going to be at a meeting about that, to talk about demographics.
Where? Which meeting?
I forget. It's a meeting.
It's a school board meeting?
It's a school board meeting, and it's about, I have to go back and see what the exact name of that meeting was called. Okay, but there's a group
At the
that,
Holbrook School?
I'm not even sure where it is. I have to go back and check my schedule.
If it's public, please email me so I can.
Yeah, it's all, are you a member, have you signed up for the SAD 63? Are you in Facebook?
No.
Okay. A lot of stuff gets talked about on the SAD 63 Facebook
I
group.
need to Facebook it. Okay. And LinkedIn, and everybody's screaming at me, get on there. We want to know about you.
Well, no, I know, because that is the way of getting the vote out. So, I mean, really, if you want to be a viable candidate, you probably do need to get out there.
I do. I want to have my own website in some way so that it's.
Well, at a minimum, if you have a Facebook
autonomy
site, you'll be
control.
more, people will see
Facebook
you
is
more.
important. It is.
And if you join the SAD 63 group, it's kind of interesting, there's like 217 members. I just signed in 2 more people today. The school board laughed at me like 5 years ago or 4 years ago, whenever it was I started it, because I was annoyed with them. Because they weren't getting information out, so I made that Facebook group. And
Nice.
now there's 217 members in that group, and they talk a lot.
That's the way to go.
So anyway, that's that.
I'm
Paul,
gonna
you want to say something? How long did it take before?
8 years.
Yeah, it took a long time.
Yeah, Fred and I are slow.
So there were a couple different groups. Ideally, you try to minimize the contentiousness of some of the stuff that comes up. But some of it is unavoidable.
Could I suggest that you put a copy of the comprehensive plan out here so the public can look at it and see what one is like
It's right there.
see if they want to, see if they want to be in,
Yeah, and it's online too, but it's also right there.
So.
But it's on the planning board website. But anyways,
Is that a legal requirement by the state of Maine that each town have
A physical copy?
have a comprehensive plan? Is that-
well, you know
Yes,
what? That's a
I
great
agree.
question. Okay, there was at one time a requirement to have a comprehensive plan in order to get state funding. However, the state planning office was closed, so in terms of from a regulatory perspective, I don't know the answer to the question at the moment, since they closed the planning office, which was the portal to get the money. So I don't know.
Before they did that, they changed the format somewhat from what ours is to streamline it more, because towns were really complaining it was really arduous to do it the way we had to do it. And now they have it in a more compact form, or they were a few
Right.
years ago. Now they may not.
There might not even be a
There's no-
standard
at all.
format.
There's no state planning office there, so. I
And,
don't know.
I don't think it's a requirement for the town to have a comprehensive plan anymore. But it's a good idea to have a vision
Yes.
of what
Right.
you'd like to see.
Right,
down the
well,
road.
part of it, like, for example, okay, in terms of going through, like, what we've just gone through for the past several years, you know, that was definitely problematic because of in the comp plan, you know, at the time, it would have been impossible for anybody to look at a crystal ball, you know, and look forward to see, you know, what was coming. And the other thing was, the state planning office wasn't overly helpful with the situation. And, you know, the group of planning board, or the comp plan people changed, you know, dramatically over the course of the time. And I think it got down to, what, 3 people at the end?
Oh,
We're actually
well, we never
working
had more than 5, but it
Right.
was Fred and I were the last.
Right, they were the last 2 who worked on it. And,
So every
without-
time we saw each other, it was a formal meeting.
right. Right, but so it didn't really get executed, you know, in a way that probably, you know, meets the way we do things, the way people conduct business now, you know. It didn't address a lot of things, and we can see that things are moving faster and faster, you know, and, you know, people's needs are shifting. You know, thus, like, what you just worked on with that emergency plan, I mean, that's something that's important for people, you know, to have.
Definitely.
So, I mean, stuff like that, you can implement that better. And the other thing is, if you do have that plan, it actually makes the job of the planning board, you know, and the job of the select board easier, because they can go back to a source document and come up with policy and budgets and things like that based on stuff that people voted on. And that's why it should be maintained like every 5 years and not let this have as long of a shelf life as this one did.
Is this something, though, we'd want to put milestones on, things like that?
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of times at the federal level, you know, it's a requirement that you do it, but a lot of times once it's done, it's on the shelf. You know, and that's the last time you see it until
Right.
somebody tells you years later, yours is out of date or whatever.
One of the influences I had, our paid consultant from Penobscot Valley Council of Governments, which doesn't exist anymore, her format for putting an objective or a goal, the town should. And I kind of rebelled at should. Nobody does things, I mean, I should diet, I should do all these. I said, either we say the town, you know, we wouldn't say the town will build a school, the town will appoint a committee to study the issue of building a school, if that's,
If that's a goal, right.
you
As
know.
opposed to it should, the town will. I agree. So you got, that is a good point that she brings up. You know, as far as how we word it so that it, you know, and there will be parts that are fluffy where there will be some shoulds, don't get me wrong, but there definitely, if there are some concrete things that based on inventorying people in the community and there's definite things that want to get done, you know, those will be, you'll have a breakdown. These are the will-dos, okay? Even if it's, you will make a committee to study it, okay? As opposed to this is the should-do, so that otherwise, like she pointed out correctly, stuff won't get done.
And there's, at least the way it was set up before, a comprehensive plan is not a legal document that enforceable, legally enforceable.
It's just a guideline.
It's a guidance. It's
In the beginning, when we first started, it was a requirement that we had one, otherwise we wouldn't get funding from the
right.
state. And the state had a lot to say. They did a lot of dictations that we weren't in favor of. And that got us in a little bit of trouble every once in a while.
So thank goodness our
But
consultant
PB
quit.
Cog was the instrumental, the head in our area, and they got all the funding, okay? And they were the ones that distributed it out. So they're the ones that made it.
The Penobscot Valley Council of Government. And it was done through, and you probably had these down in Virginia too, it was done through the Eastern Maine Economic Development Corporation, which was a non-profit, quasi-governmental entity established and funded predominantly through grant funding and they held the SBA, they were like the umbrella for the local chapter of the SBA, and a variety of other programs that were approved through Congress to dole money out. So they had a two-part thing. They would get grants. You would go through them, and you'd pay them. You'd actually raise money in your town, like say at the $3,000 to $6,000 level. You'd go, then you would pay them, and they would write block grants for you to get things done at the $40,000 or $50,000 level. So that's kind of a little bit of a shell game, and then they would take a slice after you paid them to write the block grant. Then they would take a percentage off the top, so to speak. Okay, to fund themselves.
Program.
Right, okay.
So they
This is how it works.
how to write a comprehensive plan for needing all these programs that they'll write a grant for you.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just trying to get a little bit more background.
Yeah, well, you got a lot of background now. See, we all even agree. We all even agree what they did and how they worked.
It's a simple government outfit.
I know. But that's just the way it is.
They take money off one part and put it in the other.
Right. So it was
And we're paying for it.
and we're paying for it. And then they also did get some private money sometimes. They also did importing and exporting. At the time, there was a lot of work going on. A lot of, these were some cushy trips between like the COGS, because there's one up in actually a development corporation. It's the Northern Maine Development Corporation. It's actually stayed in business up in like Aroostook County. But these different organizations, they actually used to work in tandem with the state planning office. And there was a while when, they're like about every 2 years they go on this trip to Ireland. Remember that? They used to go on trips to Ireland. Okay, John Baldacci, Governor Baldacci was big on those trips to Ireland, and they would take between 40 and 70 people on a trip on a plane to Ireland to do economic development.
Yeah.
Remember that now?
Yeah, I do. Well, they raise potatoes and we raise potatoes. We got things in common, don't you know?
Don't you know? So that doesn't happen anymore, but that's the way it used to be.
Right.
I guess I shouldn't complain. I'm
That's
taking training in Las Vegas.
It's just similar stuff.
Leopards don't change their spots.
Just
But anyway, that's a little bit of background, and even here in rural Maine, these things happen.
Oh, yeah.
One of our
They
goals
think we're
that
stupid,
They do. They count on it.
Debbie was instrumental in getting accomplished on our list was the emergency generator.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's a,
I applied one time and now we're on the list that year, but
ooh, headlines.
that's
Well, that's
very
because
good.
of our emergency plan, we
These
were
are all-
able to get that.
Okay.
Worked hard to get that plan.
So what we're gonna do real quickly here is we're gonna have like 4 little votes. We're gonna vote on the minutes for these 3 times, and then we're gonna vote to ask the select board to, actually, we'll get there just in a minute. Think about how many people we think we might want on a comp plan, or strategic planning group. I would, we'll think about, talk about it in a second as we vote on this, so you have time to kind of digest for a second. So these are the April meeting minutes, so I need a motion to approve the April 2nd, 2014 meeting minutes.
I make a motion, we accept them as written.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Sign these and Debbie. Okay, I need a motion to approve the May 7th, 2014 meeting minutes.
I make a motion, we accept them as written for May's meeting.
All in favor?
Second.
No, we're gonna get a second, all in favor. Six up and ahead,
No.
second.
Take a second.
Okay. Now I need a motion and a second. Okay, for the June 3rd, 2014 meeting minutes.
I can't do anything, I wasn't here.
I make a motion. What was the date? June 13th?
June
Yeah,
3rd.
we approved June 3rd meeting. I make a motion that we approve the June 3rd minutes.
All in favor?
I'll second.
it. Okay, there you go, sorry, jumping ahead again anyway, all in favor. Okay, and Gerald abstained.
Yeah, I had to. I was in Tennessee.
So there's that. So now, how many people do you think would be like a number that we might want to have regularly attend the comp plan meeting.
Being realistic, I would think 6 or 7 maybe.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. Definitely not more than 9.
Yeah.
Don't have too many, it won't get nothing will get done.
Exactly.
We could have subcommittees off of them, if they chair a different one, they could have individuals.
Right, that's what I'm thinking. So
Okay, so you have
7, so it'd be,
An odd number.
You need to have an odd number for votes or anything?
not really, it's not vital.
No.
Well, actually though, if we have all 5 people on the planning board be on it, that's 5. If we actually get 4 other people, with at least one of them being on the select board, and then 3, the other 3 can be whoever.
That's good.
Okay.
Does that sound like a reasonable thing to do?
Directed.
Well, we want to have at least one select board person. We need to have a liaison.
Uh-huh.
Do any of the other town
be upset.
is there the benefit of having other town officials, assuming they're willing to do it, like enforcement and things like that, or is that a conflict of interest?
Well, no, a comp plan is not a regulatory body.
So, but if they were willing to do it, animal control,
Right. Oh yeah, any
any other appointed official,
officials in town are welcome to be on.
not pose any
No.
conflicts or anything.
No, because there's like lots of votes and things like that. Really what they are just people to come to meetings and actually head up other committees.
They don't actually need to be on the board if they want to have a committee of their own.
And we could even do it that way, but it's nice to have some belly buttons, to push to get stuff done, sometimes.
Well, it comes down to actually putting pen to paper though, you probably don't want to have too large a group actually doing the writing.
Well, there's a lot of chapters, just, can you grab that, just, Tom? Sometime you should look at that. We don't
Actually, I've
think-
got a copy right here.
Okay,
Oh, that's not that.
no, this is the comp plan.
On the shelf, that's,
Somebody could write like an entire chapter on their own and it wouldn't really hurt like my feelings at all. Because otherwise, I just don't feel like writing the whole thing.
There's a lot of data in there, and there's a lot of,
Yeah, maps and stuff.
yeah.
That's great
It's
stuff.
just,
That's the same thing we've got right here. No, it's over. It's a car, I guess. And we would actually hire a consultant, town consultant?
that's potentially, we would hire a consultant. That's something to start talking about, in October.
Okay. But the consultant would not be writing the plan?
Well, they might write that. What we might do is we might be just data collectors for a consultant and we might guide the consultant and then the consultant might write the whole thing.
So we have a lot of discretion.
Oh, yeah.
on that, so.
But that's why we need to start meeting like in October, so we can make some decisions about how we want to go about doing it, so that, in January, we can recommend the amount of money to be raised, and then, we can put together a game plan and write a report for the select board to tell them how we're going to proceed and why we've made certain decisions up to that point for how we're going to get stuff done.
we have 3,900 in the reserve.
There are consultants out there,
Oh, yeah.
they exist.
Yeah, well, like, Linda just hired one for Brewer, but I don't think we would want to pay that much. I mean, theirs is like really large and has a lot going on. They have like, I think they're paying theirs like $50,000 or $60,000.
Yeah.
And gas things.
Right. You don't have gas leaks
They're all
today.
kinds
Now, I got one question here, that has the same thing, has anything going on with the, woodchuck? Not woodchuck. We got woodchuck.
Eagle Bluff.
Eagle Bluff.
Eagle Bluff has been funded and they're working right now to get the amount of money from the not Maine Coast Heritage Trust, Land and Maine Futures Fund, agreed to put money towards Eagle Bluff. So I think they have the money and they're just trying to finalize the deal. Hopefully it'll close this fall. They're getting surveyed right now.
They said it was open for climbing to the public.
It's open, yeah, it's open for climbing to the public now, but it's not, the transaction has not occurred yet with access.
So is that gonna be Clifton's?
No, it's gonna become on to access
Okay,
No, it'll be privately owned.
fund.
okay. No, that's why I'm,
But it'll be privately owned by an agency, a private agency that makes land available to the public for climbing.
Okay. So it'll never be
Taken
privatized.
away.
Right, it won't be taken away.
Well, that's what I mean, privatized.
Well,
right.
it,
Gone.
yes and no, I mean, they can do what they want with it, and so if we wanna have some say, we should maybe join the Clifton Climbing Association and some of the other people that have an
Right.
effect on what actually happens there.
Well,
Because
exactly.
the town really won't be involved in that. They're
Right.
also protected, the town can't sell it and let it go or do something else to it, so in perpetuity, they kind of protected it. Something the town wasn't willing to do at some of the last meetings.
Right,
So,
that's the issue with that, so,
well, and in some ways I can understand that because, I mean, we have all kinds of property with liens on them and you don't wanna have, you wanna be able to get rid of some of that. But if it's a public park or something else, I think the town should vote on that, but that's just
right,
me.
no, I know, I agree with you about that, but that's, yeah.
But I'm
So
starting to
anyways,
see
get
where
back to
it's
this
getting
comp plan, or the strategic plan thing we wanna do. Do we wanna have, how many members do we want the board to get for us?
Number one, is there a way to kind of test the waters, see how many volunteers would be, I mean, if you have some volunteers that really want to roll up their sleeves, I hate to turn them around because we have, turn them away because we have some arbitrary number that we already have.
We can
So-
announce
Well, that's a good
it.
point. So why don't we just vote that they solicit volunteers from the community, you know, and get their names to us by the October planning board meeting?
Take a set number, I think.
Can we announce it at the select board, with a letter?
Yeah, we can do all that stuff and advertise it on Facebook after we vote on it. That's actually a good point. I agree with you. Let's not set a number on it.
At least, yeah,
At
anyway.
least, yeah, right. I mean, if we get like, 30 people that want to do it, maybe we can,
Make them into subcommittees.
I'm thinking that's not gonna happen.
Probably better if it doesn't.
We have a difficult time getting.
How does that
They could be part of the committee.
Okay, so, the vote is gonna be then to ask the select board to solicit volunteers, and provide names to us by the October, planning board meeting.
They have to get it out next week, so. okay.
Yeah.
You have all that?
Yeah.
Okay. This could be a loose vote here, this isn't like a big formal thing, we're all in favor?
Yeah.
All right. We voted to do that, this is not big stuff.
Yeah, well, Bruce.
Yeah, that sounds good. With Bruce in charge. No.
Yeah, right now,
Of his
Bruce,
absence in
in
charge.
Bruce's absence, Bruce was made chair.
He doesn't know yet.
Yeah. So, do you guys have anything else you guys want to go over tonight?
Only quick question, the revised daily roll, are we gonna get copies when it's printed, is it gonna be printed?
It's online, you can print it.
Yep.
Oh,
And just, Debbie will get you a copy.
Do you want a copy?
Yeah, we should have hard copies to look at during the meetings.
okay, yeah.
Maybe this, if I could ask a related question, we have all these work papers, we worked on, copies of the thing, we edited, like Vernon and I would sit in there and go through and make sure that.
Yep.
Can we destroy that, or is there a record retention requirement? I'd be happy to drop it off.
It
But,
should be part of the record,
Okay,
anything, any note.
I mean, they have, scribbles where, we verified certain,
Just put them in a folder and give them to Debbie, she'll go to band around
I'd be
them.
happy to.
We're gonna have to build on another room just separate from that.
Well, they are work papers, and
Well, I would say my gut reaction would be no, but I mean, if you think, I'll
Since
go
he brought
with
it up,
Right.
my gut instinct would be there.
Be on the
No,
safe
get rid
side.
of
Be
them.
on the
Well, I put it in
safe
a box,
side.
leave it available, if anybody wants to look at them,
Yeah.
be my guest, but they are
Absolutely.
work papers related to the.
Right.
So they are a public record, I would think, so I hung on to them, so.
I don't know, I never took notes. I
Uh,
wasn't here now.
Eddington just said that last time, you want to know?
Really?
What?
Eddington,
To who? To
they had a meeting last night, Eddington.
people in they can't take notes, or people in the audience can't take notes, or?
Joan said they weren't.
Okay,
The board is,
Are
whatever.
they recorded?
interesting.
I don't believe so. You don't have to take notes. You don't have to have minutes either. No legal requirement.
Not very transparent, is it?
I would think that would be
Okay,
an invitation for,
no problem.
Yeah.
It is.
So are we gonna have a motion to adjourn?
I was just thinking that. I make a motion, we adjourn this meeting.
I'll second that.
In favor? Done.
You got a dual.